bunch of you have been asking for a walkthrough on the truck. When I say a bunch of you, I think there are 7 of you, but when you only have 42 subscribers, I feel like that's a pretty high ratio. So what I've done is I've loaded up the truck. We've got our adventure trailer with us. I've got my oldest boy, Maddox, with me, and we are headed up to the mountains. We're going to do a quick overnight camp trip, and I'll find some time to do a walkthrough on the truck and kind of point out the features and the things that I've added to get it to where it is today, and then I'll talk a little bit about what my future plans are with it. This is one of the coolest campsites I've ever been to. I'll show you a better view of it in the morning because it is pretty awesome. That's what you're cooking up.
So I'm cooking this popcorn. It's called Jiffy Pop, I think. I can't read it because it got ripped when I was taking off the part. But it's because we're gonna watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. All right, well, we found our epic camp spot. Probably one of the coolest I've been to. We slept great last night, wasn't too cold, but we're gonna go make some breakfast and then we'll take a few minutes to go talk about some of the details on the truck. All right, so what we're dealing with here is it's a 1995 F150. It's got a 302 in it, which is a little bit of a dog. The motor itself is really stock. I've got Summit branded headers on it. I've got a MagnaFlow exhaust, 3-inch all the way back, which is way overkill, but it was plans to do a bit bigger motor build here in the future. It was a junkyard find. The truck used to be red. It was in pretty bad shape. Paint was pretty torn up. To be fair, the paint still isn't in great shape. I know the fenders are mismatched, and you can see that I cracked that back fender. This is a rattle can job by a first-timer, and if you are wondering, JB Weld will hold a fender for 2 years. Then you need to tape it. It did not run, and the transmission was bad, so this was a junkyard build I built in my garage over the course of, it was actually my COVID build. Built it in about a year of just puttering around in my garage in the evenings. We'll kind of walk through. I think the first thing is the suspension. It's sitting on kind of a hybrid lift. It's a Pro Comp Stage 2. It's supposed to be a 6-inch lift. I'm gonna say it's about a 5-inch. The front springs settled quite a bit, and then I ended up removing the overload spring in the rear and going to longer shackles, which I'll show you, which also dropped that rear end about 1 inch. So my guess is I'm sitting on about a 5-inch lift. Up front, it is sitting on, let's see if I can see this, those are the Pro Comp springs. I really recommend Pro Comp because they have the lightest or the softest springs. The softest springs for these types of rigs. There's lots of other options for lots of other rigs out there, but this is what I found to be a pretty good off-the-shelf for this rig. If I remember, these are about 420 or 450 inch-pound springs, which is still a little heavier than I like, but they do ride really well. It is running on some Fox 2.0 reservoir shocks from a company called AccuTune. So what they do is they actually custom tune these shocks, which made a night and day difference. You'll tell them what spring rate you have. They get your motion ratios. They will spend time with you figuring out how you use the truck. And so the unique part about this tune and the way I use it, because we do Moab and we're mostly just meandering down trails. I've got my family with me. So these are low speed adjustable. So these are pretty much tuned, so when these are turned all the way down, there's almost no dampening in the shock, and that really gives me almost like a boat-like feeling when we are just cruising down the trail. And my wife and kids love it because we can go on these really, really rough, washboardy, rocky trails, and when we're only cruising, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, it rides like a dream. But then each shock's got 9 positions. I'll turn it up to about 4 or 5 for street driving. It firms it up quite a bit. It handles great. And then if we do want to do a little bit faster, aggressive driving, we can crank them all the way up, and they actually handle, it's not a pre-runner by any means, but it'll handle pretty high speed stuff within reason. So AccuTune for the shocks, Pro Comp for the lift. It is on the Pro Comp, let's see if I can see those, the long arm kit, which makes a huge difference in articulation. It is wrapped around, or I guess I should say I am running on 35-inch ridge grapplers, and they are wrapped around 17-inch. These are actually 4-wheel parts branded wheels, which my assumption would be they are just rebranded Pro Comp wheels. The sad part is I bought these. I really liked them. They've got the fake bead locks. That's not a real bead lock, although it is quite tough. I'll show you some of the damage. But they are, like I said, they're 4-wheel parts branded. But I bought 4 due to budget, and then when I went back to buy the 5th for my spare, a matching spare, they actually don't make these anymore. So they only made them for about a year, and I ended up. I've just got a set of wheels now. I'm just kind of stuck with. If I have to replace them, I'll end up having to buy a whole new set. But I have liked the wheels quite a bit. And when I say they're tough, you can see these things just get absolutely abused, almost like a bead lock. And I've just had really good luck with them. They stay balanced, and I really like them. All right. Wrapping around the front here, the armor. So this is one of those prefabbed bumpers from a company called Move. I'm gonna say that it is a semi-custom bumper because this was their non-winch bumper. I always hated on these trucks when you go to get a winch bumper, they look like they have a fat lip, like the bumpers are coming way out here. They're just ginormous. They're not very low profile. Just didn't like them. So I ended up getting their non-winch bumper. And even this one was modified because when you buy these, it's got a big, almost like an air dam that comes way down. It really hurt the departure angle. I think it looked kind of bulky and bulbous. So I ended up chopping that off when I welded these up. And then I was able to fit, and I created gussets and a plate. Inside there I'm running a 12,000 pound Badland winch, which I have absolutely loved. The lights, I know it says rigid on there. That is just the rigid amber cover. These are actually rough country lights, which I have been really, really happy with. So these are their spots, and I run them with these amber covers so they cut through the dust a lot better. I don't run them very often. They're great for snow, or if I just want to, like I said, turn them on for the dust. These are the rough country. These are actually DOT approved fog lights, so I don't use these off-road very often. I do use them on the road quite a bit. I wanted a fog light that I wasn't blinding people. Don't be that guy. You know those guys that'll have their light bars and then run them on the road. Don't be that guy. Anyway, It is a rough country light bar, and I don't know if you can tell in here, but I actually did do, it's a 30-inch, but it's a curved. I found that with the curved, they might not match the lines of the vehicle as much, but I feel like the curved light bar gives me a lot more throw, or at least a wider pattern. But all in all, I have just been really happy with this bumper. It has taken some abuse. We have yanked on it quite a bit with recoveries. You can't see here, and I don't know if there's a way for me to show you, but where it mounts to the frame is very heavily gusseted. If you're wondering what these are, I actually use a Blue Ox tow bar, and occasionally when we do our Moab trips, I'll tow this down just because I do like to have two vehicles, one just for insurance, the other so my wife can run around while we're doing some of the harder trails. She likes to take the kids swimming. All right, moving around to the back, I've got a pretty standard bed rack on it. I believe I got it from a company called Hot Metal Fab. It was at the time the cheapest one I could find at the right height. So with this, with the truck being larger rig anyway, I wanted everything to sit below the cab line. I didn't want extra wind resistance if you're having to go underneath trees or fit places. I wanted everything below that cab line, which this does pretty good. Running a high lift jack, fire extinguisher. This is a Boit gun case that I had, but I actually use it for all of my recovery gear. So I didn't want stuff rolling around in the bed of the truck all the time, and I wanted it accessible. So I've got my air up recovery gear and anything else we use out on the trail. Ended up getting, this is I think a cheap roof rack from Harbor Freight that I bolted on there to hold that the full-size spare, just to keep everything out of the bed. This is a truck sport bedroll. This to me is probably one of the it's the best piece of equipment. It keeps our equipment dry. I love it. I went a lot of years without running one. Once I finally did run one, a bed cover like this, I will never go without. Then I've got a Set Power fridge. This is one of their larger ones. It's a dual zone. We'll run one as a freezer or one as a fridge. I did build this bed rack. I got these rails off of Amazon. And then I just use, I don't know if you can see it because of the dark. Let's see here. Just some angle iron from Home Depot. Ended up welding everything together. And it works pretty slick. It's actually another one of those, another piece of equipment that I just don't think I'll be able to do without. I think messing with ice, especially with my kids, and just coolers was a big pain in the butt. So we've got it so slide it away. We can be on our way and when we need stuff, just pull it right out. And absolutely one of the best investments I've made. And I just recently put it on there. I haven't been running it for a long. You'll notice if you do end up kind of tagging along on this channel with me, all of these accessories and how it's kitted out is almost like a pair of shoes. So I think I change it all the time. Sometimes I'll have the tent on the rack depending on what kind of trip we're going on. For the most part, it is set up like this. The build for this truck was, it's unique. You don't see a lot of these trucks built this way. I built it much like I would have built a Jeep Gladiator. It's a little bit overland. We use it for rock crawling. It's a camping vehicle. So it's really set up to be, depending on how you look at it, kind of a Swiss Army knife, a jack of all trades. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. I look at it as it does everything I want pretty well. Some of you might look at it as it doesn't do anything really well. And that'd be true as well. But just the way we use the vehicle, we do a little bit of everything. Camping, overlanding, rock crawling, off-roading, and then I use it for utility as well. Runs to Home Depot. I mean, we use it as a work truck. It gets used and abused. Let's see here. Here on this side, I just barely installed. This is the Tough Stuff. It's a 270-degree awning. This probably won't be a permanent fixture on here, as this we'll actually replace that Smitty built awning once I get some better brackets built. I usually will run some Rotopacks here. We'll bring some extra water. I like to bring fuel for not the truck, but little generators that we will have when we stay longer. But they are not on there because I did just throw the awning on last minute. And then the way the Rotopacks were mounted is there wasn't a lot of room. So I've got to reconfigure that. Coming around, I don't know if we'll be able to see it, the back axle, this is actually part of the cooler part. That is a Dana 60. It's got 488 gears, which I think is too low for 35s on this truck. The transmissions aren't geared high enough. It is a 4-speed automatic. And so with 488s, when I'm on the highway, it is a little bit high strung. But I'm running the 488 gears with the 35s, and then I do have ARB air lockers, front and rear. The front is right now, it is still the stock 44. It handles the 35s just fine. I know on these trucks you'll hear a lot of back and forth on it. I've had great luck with this twin I-beam axle, the stock 44. I think the two things that contribute is, one, don't use cheap U-joints. Use the good Spicer U-joints in them. You shouldn't have a lot of problem. And then I'm not a super lead-footed person. I just won't abuse that front end. It's not worth ruining a trip with my family just because I want to get a little bit crazy. So I'm pretty nice to it. That doesn't mean we don't climb some pretty gnarly stuff. I just use a lot of throttle control. I do not have the lead foot tactic. But same as the rear, 48 gears. We did have to go to the larger carrier in that front end to get that ring and pinion in there. But it's an ARB air locker up front as well. And then I don't know if you can tell right here, right there, I'm running a little camera, and I'll go in and show you on the inside, on the interior. But that's so I can see those front wheels when we are doing some of the harder trails. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the steering here. So this does have 3/4 ton steering. The bars do look skinnier than you'd find on like a Jeep, but they are solid bar. They are not hollow. So they're pretty beefy. I've done the over knuckle kit, which really helped line up those angles. That's one of the tricky things with these twin I-beams is if your steering rods or your tie rods are not at the same angle or in line with the beams on your axle, you'll get really bad bump steer. I probably fought that for years before I figured out I needed to get a bigger drop pitman arm and then do the over knuckle kit. Change the way that truck drives. I would imagine that it drives about how they do in their stock, even when it's lifted like this. So a huge upgrade. I've also done if you guys are OBS guys or gals, I've done the Saginaw steering pump replacement, but then on top of that, I called PCS, is it PCS? No, PSC, Power Steering Components. They make high-end steering components and pumps, and told them the pump that I had, and they actually had a high-performance steering pump that came with it. So just short of doing hydraulic assisted steering, that pump turns those 35s like it is nothing. I do not doubt that it would handle 37s really easy as well. So that is something I'm considering. Now we went over as far as lighting. So these are aftermarket headlights. They are cheap ones. I don't even remember the brand. I ended up having to retrofit the back end of these to fit better bulbs in them, but they did make a huge difference. I've got, like we already talked about, the pods. The light bar is fantastic. I do not run a light bar up there. For the most part, I think they are a little bit useless. There are some times where I can see where having a light higher to throw the light further helps, would help in some situations. We do almost no high-speed stuff, so the light that this 30-inch bar throws is just phenomenal. I did not want the wind noise and the drag of the light bar up on top. Also, I think they do have, and I think I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but the light bar on top, I think, gives it a little bit of a bro truck look, which I didn't want. I wanted it to be utility, just a gnarly off-road truck, purpose built. I'm running these ditch lights, which I absolutely love. I don't remember the brand. I got them off of Amazon. They weren't necessarily cheap for Amazon, but they were not. We're not talking rigid or anything else like that. So I've had them on here for several years. Absolutely love them. They provide a bunch more light, especially when we use this truck for hunting and out in trails. So it is really awesome to get just the larger throw. Lights were something I did not run. I never ran on my vehicles. I thought they were kind of a waste of money. But to be honest, once you get a good light set up on your vehicle, it's still not a must-have, but it is something that I don't think I'll go without on any other vehicle build. And then as far as more lights, we can take a look here. I've got the rear bumper. Actually, let's get this tailgate up here. Okay, got the tailgate up. Same deal with this bumper on the rear. This is, I'll call it a semi-custom. It is a prefab bumper from Move Bumpers. I did do quite a few modifications to it. For example, the bumper itself would come down a lot lower. It hurt the departure angle quite a bit. So I ended up chopping new lines, welding plates on the bottom of it for a lot more rigidity, because you can see here, we do drag, just the nature of this truck, we're dragging it off of rocks on the harder trails. I'm running just some pod lights for reverse lights. Ended up doing an integrated hitch mount here. But that is both front and rear bumpers are made out of 3/16 steel. The truck itself is not that heavy. I think a lot of people be surprised. As it is kitted out right now, I'm at 5,300 pounds. To give you an idea, that actually weighs the same as the Jeep Wranglers with the 392 in it, completely stock. So that's one of the reasons I love these OBS Fords, is I need the room. Me and my wife have 4 kids, so we can sit 6 in this comfortably. We have the room, but it's still lightweight. It's not a big, huge, heavy rig. I know a lot of people will rig up like the Excursions, which physically are a very similar size of this, wheelbase, height, width. But man, you're looking at additional 2,000 pounds or more, depending on how you rig up that Excursion. And I do prefer a gas motor off-road, especially in the sand. The best part about diesel motors is also what I think is the worst part about them off-road, as they just have gobs and gobs and gobs of torque, which can be hard to control in off-road situations when you need a lot of control when it comes to wheel slippage. Okay, we'll take a quick look inside. It's really not that exciting. I haven't done a lot. This truck did have a bench seat in it. I ended up swapping that out for one of the 40/20/40s so I could have an armrest, and then when we do take the whole family, we've got an extra seat. It looks very messy right now because we are camping. I've got my oldest boy out. We're doing our monthly camp with the kid. But we'll come in here, let me see here. So when it comes to the cockpit, it is in really nice condition for the age of the truck. I replaced a lot of the parts that were broken. My patches have taken up all the room. My kids keep giving me patches. They know we like them, so I'm going to have to go find some more patch space. But we start over here. I'm actually using an older Garmin Nuvi. I do use it for navigation sometimes, but I actually use it mostly for the vehicle telemetry. So it gives me a more accurate mile per hour, so the speed I'm going. It'll calculate my mileage, tell me my top speeds. It actually gives me a lot more information. And just the nature of where it is, I actually really like it, because when I'm looking down the road, I actually can just glance and see my speed easier than, I know that sounds super lazy. Actually, as I say it out loud, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? But it does make a difference, being able to notice your speed without taking your eyes off the road. So that's primarily what I use that for. my navigation, oh, it's not in here. Typically I'll use Gaia GPS on my mag mount right here. That's what I use for off-road navigation. I do have my, I was going to call it a Switch Pro. It's not. This is an Amazon, we'll call it an Amazon knockoff. It is a knockoff, but to be honest, I've been running it for 2 years and it is fantastic. So I've got all of my front lights have amber running lights, which I really love. Got the light cubes, my ditch lights, the fog lights, got my reverse lights. I do have rock lights all around. I have a front camera. Maybe we can turn that on. And then this was supposed to be a different set of fog lights, but I need a new sticker. This actually runs my auxiliary battery. So I'll actually grab the keys and I'll show you how that actually works. So the way this auxiliary, it's actually really neat. I've got a battery in the bed of the truck that's mounted back there. That set power fridge runs off of it. Right now it's running off of only the battery, but if I were to, let's just say, start the truck. Let's see here. I won't start it, but it's in the accessory position. Even when I start the truck, it is still running off of that auxiliary battery. But what I can do is I've got this switch wired up to a relay, but as soon as I turn that on, now the truck battery and the auxiliary battery are wired in parallel. So the truck system will now charge that auxiliary battery. I can turn that on and off whenever I want. And then the way the system works is as soon as I turn it off, it'll shut off. And then if I come back on, it will not charge that auxiliary battery. I did that because I know there's a lot better ways to set up an auxiliary battery. I do everything on a budget. And what I was trying to mitigate there is me forgetting and letting that fridge drain both the truck and the auxiliary battery. So I set it up to where it will only run off the truck battery when it's running, and I actively turn it on. So that way I don't get out here stranded with a dead battery. Now we're going to come in here. I did put an Apple CarPlay, we'll call it an infotainment system. But one of the neat things here is if I come over here, I can turn my camera power on. I can come in here, let's go like this, and then I can do my front camera. And now, I don't know how well you can see. You can't really see the tire. The tires are right here, but this is actually set up perfect to where any obstacle that's running along just the outside of these lines, that's what my tires are going to hit. So it really helps, especially with a rig this big or when you're cresting over obstacles. That thing has been indispensable. And then this particular unit's really neat because then if I wanted to, I can actually, I don't know where it is, I can run my rear camera as well. So if I just wanted to check on my load or the trailer or anything like that, I can turn that rear camera on and view it that way. And then the best thing I like about that is I can run that off of my Apple CarPlay, which is huge. Other than that, oh, and then I've got my, you can see here my air. I've got my onboard air, front locker, and the rear locker. So everything is tucked in there as nicely as I could get it without being a professional and being on a budget. But other than that, the truck itself is pretty straightforward on the inside. All right, well, that's all I can think of for now as far as this truck goes. I'm sure I left some stuff out, and I'm sure there might be some questions. So leave those down in the comments. I don't have a lot of followers, so the good news right now is it's a pretty good chance I'm going to respond to all of you. So if you have more questions, you want to see something else, or wonder how I did something, happy to help you out in the comments. It might even give me more ideas for videos, so happy to do that. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.
Isn't so bad.
We are descending down into a cliff from up there. We're gonna head down into here to adventure. Okay, we climbed down in here. We wanted to see the canyon, and it is July, and there is
Snow.
a big hunk of snow. Is
Let's
what
go
this
down
is.
there.
Looks like a big rock, but that's all snowpack. This is cool. Oh, Maddox is standing on like a little mini glacier that's back in here. I don't know if you can tell, but it's, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 feet thick in the center. We're in this big, like, almost a cliff bowl right now where you have to climb out on all sides.
Hey, Daddy, look, I go.
Nice.
Woo!
Don't get too close, my man.
Maybe go over there and sit on my rock.
Maybe. I don't know if I like this.
I do.
Well, sure.
I'm one of the best climbers at school. I got an award for it at Camp Tracy.
I believe it. Look, we're on like a crazy peak. This is where our journey ends right here.
Yeah, that's true.
My mom's gonna see these videos and not like it.
Why?
You can't tell from the film, but those cliffs are an easy 200 to 300 feet till you hit the ground. This is nuts.